Hi, it's Willow here from Willow's Web Astrology, and I'm here to do a little video today because today is a bit of a somber anniversary. It is the 10th anniversary of the beginning of the ongoing Fukushima nuclear disaster. And I say it's the ongoing Fukushima nuclear disaster because that's very much what it is, an ongoing disaster that began March 11th, 2011 and has now stretched 10 long years. Now, I have put a new article up on my site, and I really feel that this is, one of the stronger articles that I've put out through my site. And what this article is an astrological review of two Chiron and Pisces ocean disasters at their 10th anniversaries. Because you may recall it didn't get maybe as much media play or was maybe drowned out by the Fukushima situation, which happened in March 2011. But in April 2010, we had another ocean disaster, which was the Deepwater Horizon offshore drilling rig explosion, which created an oil gusher for about 3 months, gushing oil into the Gulf of Mexico. And then, of course, we had on top of that the toxic core exit dispersant, chemical dispersant, sprayed on top of the oil to attempt to break it up and force it to the ocean floor. So, in other words, not a cleanup, but more a cover up, I would say. This article that I wrote, it's a bit of a beast. It's got a lot of information. I've been covering I've been covering Fukushima in an ongoing way since March 2011. And I did cover Deepwater Horizon fairly extensively in the year after it happened. But then, of course, my attention was turned from Deepwater Horizon to Fukushima. So that's where I just realized, sorry, got an errant hair going on here. So that's where my attention has gone. But I just wanted to do a little video on this article just to sort of draw attention to it and to talk a little bit about what the astrology of these two ocean disasters looks like. Now, I'm going to say I am not, there's that hair still. I'm not a vlogger. I don't consider myself a vlogger. See, I can't get rid of it. Can't you tell? Because I'm like obsessing over there we go, it's gone. Obsessing over hair while doing a video. So I don't consider myself an astrology vlogger. I'm not, I consider myself a writer. So when I do the videos, I know there's no graphics, there's no snappy intro, there's no, it's very, amateur hour. These videos are very amateur hour, but I think that there's something kind of nice to just a stripped down video too, right? Like just person to person. I'm just talking, right? I'm just sharing what I did. I'm just sharing my article with you. So take it in that light. Please don't critique my obviously, amateurish and lax vlogging skills. So anyway, both the Deepwater Horizon and the Fukushima disaster happened during the transit of Chiron through Pisces. And Chiron is the wounded healer, considered the wounded healer. And so it is related to health and wounds and healing and pain and all of these types of things. And Pisces is related to a lot of different things. But one of the things that Pisces is related to is the oceans. And it's also related to oil. So themes related to oil. There's an invisibility factor with Pisces. So things being made invisible or things being invisible. And there's also an element to Pisces as far as invisible connections. So energetic connections, spiritual connections, connection, basically the idea that everything that happens is sort of connected to everything else and has an effect, right? An effect, even if that effect is invisible in the populace. There are sort of radiating effects that touch us in ways that we may not be fully aware of. Okay, so so there are some astrological similarities between these two ocean disasters that I outlined in the article. And the first one, of course, the first one is that they were both Chiron and Pisces ocean disasters. Chiron transited Pisces from 2010 to 2019. And so both of these disasters happened early on in the Chiron in Pisces transit. In fact, the Deepwater Horizon explosion happened on the day of the Chiron ingress of Pisces. And both these events happen on major ingresses. This is one element that I see as indicating that were potentially intentionally sabotaged sites. Okay, and I talk about that in the article. Don't attack without understanding what I'm saying. So the Deepwater Horizon offshore drilling rig exploded, and the oil gusher began April 20th, 2010, on the very day that Chiron entered Pisces. Okay, so the very day that the wounded healer entered the sign of oil and oceans, right? So we've got that element going on, because the Deepwater Horizon offshore drilling rig was, of course, drilling for oil in the Gulf of Mexico. So it was out in the ocean drilling for oil. Okay, so both of these disasters also happened with Neptune in Aquarius, in late Aquarius, in mutual reception and semi-sextile aspect to Uranus in Pisces. Okay, so a mutual reception is when when two planets are in the signs that are ruled by the other. Okay, so Neptune rules Pisces, right? But Neptune was in the sign of Aquarius at the time of these disasters. And Uranus rules Aquarius, but it was in the sign of Pisces at the time of the disasters, right? So they were in each other's signs. Uranus and Neptune were in each other's signs. And so a mutual reception basically makes the themes related to those planets in those signs more intense, stronger, more dramatic. There's a sort of interwoven kind of intensity between these two bodies, and a sort of special relationship that kind of merges the themes of these two bodies. And so, of course, Neptune is the god of the sea, right? It is a planet that relates to the sea. And of course, Neptune is the ruler of Pisces. Pisces as a sign would relate to water, and I would say in particular oceans, and scenarios that relate to oceans. Okay, Neptune and Pisces again also relate to oil and gases, and dispersion, dissolution, an invisibility factor. Okay, so yes, and the other thing that was going on, oh, and sorry, I'll just mention that a semi-sextile aspect, excuse me, is a generally supportive aspect that is 30 degrees apart. So basically one full sign apart. And so Neptune in Aquarius in mutual reception to Uranus in Pisces at the time of these disasters, they were in tight semi-sextile aspect as well. So that made the mutual reception even more intense, right? And so of course you see these very extremely dramatic, extremely long lasting, the effects of them are extremely long lasting. These sort of explosive elements going on. Okay. The other thing that is in common between the two disaster charts, and the disaster charts I show in the article, I'll link to the article in the description of this video, and you can check it out. You can check out the disaster charts for the charts for the days of the disaster. So both charts had Neptune in Aquarius in close conjunction to Chiron in Pisces. So Neptune in late Aquarius conjunct Chiron in early Pisces. And that again indicates, these sort of wounding themes, these themes of toxins being invisible, being made invisible, the harm being made invisible, related to these two disasters. The idea that the ocean is just going to swallow up all this toxicity and everything's going to be fine, right? It's going to disperse, and we can all just pretend it's not happening, right? Yeah, like I said, they both happened on the day of a major ingress. The Deepwater Horizon, April 20th, 2010, coincided with Chiron entering Pisces. And the Fukushima nuclear disaster, March 11th, 2011, coincided with Uranus re-entering Aries from Pisces. Now, I have also outlined in this article something that I've been talking about for a number of years now, which is that there appears to be a pattern of attacks that happen around March equinox when Uranus is changing signs. Now, what happened this past March 2020, was a little bit different, and I'll talk about that. But going back to March 2003, that's when Uranus moved into Pisces for the first time. And that March 2003 coincided with the invasion of Iraq, again, under false pretenses, right? Weapons of mass destruction that were never found. 9/11 was used as a precursor, as a sort of instigation or justification for invading Iraq, which, I mean, had absolutely nothing to do with Iraq or the Iraqi people. The other thing that happened, the other thing that I've noticed is the use of some type of radiation or radioactivity that coincides with these attacks. And so Uranus, of course, relates to uranium. Okay, so anything nuclear or anything radiation related, really, Uranus would be tied to. So again, March 2003, Uranus enters Pisces. We have the invasion of Iraq, and we also have the widespread use of depleted uranium munitions. And depleted uranium munitions basically have toxified the bodies and the systems of Iraqi people and other countries that they were used in, like Bosnia as well, and also NATO soldiers. And so there have been devastating birth defects and major health problems associated with people who have come into contact with depleted uranium munitions dust, because what happens is the core of a depleted. So yeah, okay. Let me just very carefully say this: depleted uranium munitions at their core have depleted uranium. Okay, and this makes them hard enough to penetrate tanks and other armor and militia, right? Militia related. I don't know. I don't know what the word exactly is, but basically it allows them to penetrate tanks and other targets. Okay, but when the munition hits the target, it somehow produces dust. It kind of the byproduct of that is dust, right? And this dust is radioactive, and so this dust is circulating around in the air, in the water, and people are breathing it in, they're eating it, they're drinking it. And so what's happened basically is that people's bodies have become irradiated via these depleted uranium munitions. Again, both in the countries that they're being used on and in the soldiers and in sort of the NATO soldiers who have used them. And this has caused just devastating birth defects. Women in Fallujah were actually just told to stop having babies by the doctors there because the birth defects were just so terrible, right? And so basically destroying genetic lines. That's what one of the things that was tied to the March 2003 Uranus ingress of Pisces. Okay, so fast forward to the next. So Uranus spends about 7 or 8 years in each sign. Okay, so fast forward to March 2011, and of course we know what went on in March 2011, right? So Uranus re-entered. Uranus re-entered Aries from Pisces. It had dipped into Aries one time prior to that. But Uranus re-entered Aries in March 2011, And that coincided with the bombing of Libya, the assassination of Gaddafi, and the Fukushima nuclear disaster. Okay. And so I do believe that the Fukushima nuclear disaster, I think there is very, I feel there's a very strong percentage of possibility or probability that it was intentional sabotage. And yes, I realize people would think I'm insane some people would think I'm insane for saying that. But that's what I've believed right from the beginning. As soon as I started the astrology, basically, because again, it just seemed that it was being timed to that actual movement of Uranus into Aries. And again, we've got the pattern going on, right? So Fukushima would be the covert nuclear warfare that was unleashed in March 2011. Depleted uranium munitions was the covert nuclear warfare that was unleashed in March 2003. Okay. Okay, so then we fast forward to the next ingress of Uranus. And I was expecting the big event to happen in March 2019. I'm not going to lie. Because in March 2019, Uranus went into Taurus. That was the Uranus ingress around March equinox, right? So I was really expecting the big show to be March 2019. Well, it wasn't, was it? It was actually March 2020. That was the big show. And so the big show coincided with, so basically what happened in March 2020 was, of course, the global lockdown and the surreptitious 5G rollout. Okay, so the surreptitious 5G rollout is what I would associate with the sort of covert radiation-related attack. Okay, that would be following in this sort of pattern that's going on. So yes, what happened in January 2020 was, of course, the conjunction between Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. And following that, around March equinox of 2020, I believe on March equinox of 2020, Saturn moved into Uranus. Okay, so it made that conjunction to Pluto, which was a historic kind of like, it was a big moment, and we saw a big sort of authoritarian push coming around this Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn. Then Saturn moves on into Aquarius, and Aquarius is, of course, disposited by Uranus. Saturn in Aquarius is, of course, disposited by Uranus in Taurus. Okay, so basically the big show, the big sort of orchestrated event coincided actually with Saturn moving into Aquarius, out of that, still within range of that conjunction to Pluto, being disposited by Uranus in early Taurus. So like I said, Uranus had already been in Taurus, had already kind of dipped into Taurus prior to that, but Uranus was still in early Taurus. Okay, so that's basically kind of the quick hit rundown of, and I'm sorry I don't have a graphic to say this. It would be like a lot easier. I don't have those skills, you guys. I'm sorry. I'm a simple Saskatchewan ranch girl. I do not have the technical skills to make professional videos, unfortunately. But that's the basic rundown of. See how inadequate I feel about my vlogging skills? It's really sad, isn't it? So that's basically the rundown of some of the points that I cover in this article. And then, of course, the other element is that these are ongoing disasters. So these toxins didn't go anywhere, right? They were just hidden, right? And so the oil was literally hidden by dumping just, massive quantities of chemical dispersant core exit, which was banned in the UK at the time that they were using it in the US, at the time that they were spraying it all over the Gulf of Mexico. And so health damage in the Gulf of Mexico is widespread, has been since 2010, and the health damage continues to this day in many of the people. Now, they were finding oil and core exit residue in the seafood. That was pretty well covered up. You know, and so the thing is that the damage that was done to the ocean ecosystem hasn't gone anywhere. The damage to the people in that area hasn't gone anywhere, and it continues, right? Those toxins are still there. Those toxins are still, you know, still wreaking havoc, okay? Even though they may be invisible, right? Which again is a Piscean, Neptunian theme. Fukushima as well, okay? Because radiation is invisible, right? It's easy to sort of put it out of people's minds. There was the really kind of crazy and erroneous idea that the ocean would just disperse the the radioactive isotopes, which is not possible, right? And so the other element is that beginning in 2011, we saw an accelerated collapse of the Pacific Ocean ecosystem, and that collapse continues to this day. So there have been widespread mass die-offs in multiple species of sea life. And this was covered very extensively on a site called enenews.com, E-N-E news.com. And unfortunately, that site has been taken down. And that left kind of a big hole. But it got the information out there, which is that, again, since 2011, we've seen accelerated mass die-offs in animals in sea life. Dana Durnford, ex-commercial diver and Fukushima researcher, did excursions up and down the British Columbia West Coast, and he took photographic and video evidence of the tide pools and the fact that the tide pools are missing thousands of species. Luckily, because Dana was a commercial fisherman, commercial diver, he had photographs of the tide pools before Fukushima, which were just teeming with life. And then he also has photos of the tide pools on two separate excursions, and just show complete, you know, like pretty well a wasteland. There's still some life in the tide pools, but absolutely nothing like it was. And as he says, literally thousands of species are missing from those tide pools. And he knows the healthy ocean versus the unhealthy ocean. Not saying the ocean was completely healthy before Fukushima, but Fukushima was the tipping point that really accelerated the die-offs that were going on. Yes. So, and Dana has been attacked quite a lot and attempted to be silenced quite a lot, and he's had to fight very diligently to get this information out there. And of course, there are a number of people who still research Fukushima, write about Fukushima, keep it in the air. I just try to do my part with that. Okay, so mass die-offs have been going on. They're pretty well documented. I have a list of links in this article that you can go through and just double check that this is going on. And so fast forward to 2021, and what's going on is that there are unusual mortality events being studied by the U.S. government for seals and whales. And now seals and whales are only two of the many species that are getting ill and dying, but they're two of the bigger species, so maybe they can cover that. I mean, there's sea stars that are like goo, turning to goo. There were polar bears showing up starving. There were just all kinds of walruses and all kinds of animals that were showing up with problems. And so what's happened is that since 2011, I'm just going to get this. So since 2011, there has been a U.S. government agency that has been forced to open unusual mortality events for seals and whales. Okay, this government agency is the one that is related to oceans, and it's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the NOAA. So from 2011 to 2016, the NOAA was studying unusual mortality events for seals and I believe also whales. And so they were seeing dead seals and whales, and they were also seeing seals with hair loss, lesions, abnormal behavior, all symptoms of radiation poisoning. Okay. And the NOAA attempted to close these unusual mortality events with inconclusive results. So basically saying, we don't know what's going on with these things. It could be a number of factors, right? And yes, it could be a number of factors, but let's be honest. If this began in 2011, if these accelerated mass die-offs began in 2011, we have some pretty strong evidence that we know what tipped these off, right? So the NOAA was forced to open new unusual mortality events for both seals and whales in 2018. And those unusual mortality events continue to this day, to the present time. Dana Durnford has actually done an excursion on the east coast of Canada now as well. And he has been reporting, he did some reporting in January 2021 on 15 dead whales that had washed up on the shore along the coast of Newfoundland, Canada. And the whales that he took video of it appeared emaciated, malnourished. Okay. And so that would make sense if the Pacific Ocean ecosystem is collapsing and there isn't enough food for the whales, or if the food that the whales are ingesting is toxic to them, right? So this is going on, okay? And that's basically one of the main threads in the article, is that these are both ongoing disasters. The damage that was done, that began in 2010, 2011, now 10 years on, is continuing. And again, there's an attempt to make invisible the real source of the damage, the real source of the toxicity that's been unleashed, right? The people in the Gulf of Mexico area, U.S. Gulf of Mexico area, continue to have health problems, continue to have, really shortened lifespans, right? There's a cancer cluster. This is going on. We live in times when almost 1 in 2 people will experience cancer at some time in their lives. That's not normal. That's not healthy. That's not just the way things are on planet Earth, right? That is, the human environment reaching a level of toxicity that is notwithstandable. Our bodies are not able to withstand, right? The levels of toxicity and the layers of toxicity that are coming down on us, right? So anyway, this is kind of the overriding view of this article. There's a lot of research that I've compiled again over the course of 10 years, and it's I've tried to distill it into something that is hard hitting, but also not hard to read. So that's astrojournalism, right? You're always trying to make something the most understandable. So the overriding idea with the sign of Pisces is that it is all connected. Okay, so basically what's going on in the Gulf of Mexico, what's going on at Fukushima, is going to have repercussions, is going to have ripple effects that we can't even potentially see right now, right? It's going to cause health harm, potentially for generations to come, right? And so we have to become aware of this on a sort of public level, right? Number one, to protect ourselves, but number two, to understand that, these are issues that need solutions still. After 10 years, there's really no adequate solution. There's no amount of money that can be paid to make up for this type of devastation, this type of toxicity, toxification of our environment and our homes, right? They're toxifying our home, which is this planet, but also, these toxins are sort of dispersing and spreading throughout much of the globe. So anyway, this is the article. This is the day. The article is an astrological review of 2 Chiron and Pisces ocean disasters at their 10th anniversaries. And I hope anyone interested will check it out. I think the astrology of these events is really fascinating, really interesting. And whether or not you believe that they are acts of intentional sabotage, you can very much see the astrological themes in both of these events and in what's going on today. The moon, Pallas Athena and the moon have just activated the Neptune Chiron conjunction in these disaster charts. So it's at this 10th anniversary, it's sort of very applicable. The situation is very sort of relevant, just as relevant today as it was 10 years ago. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the article. Well, would enjoy be the word that you would use when reading about something else. The truth of the matter is that I understand that mundane astrology is not as popular as individual astrology or relationship astrology or things of that nature. But I do think that astrology is one of the things that helps us to put our world into a sort of sense of context, or give us insights into our world that we couldn't see otherwise. I will say, when I first started writing, I didn't even know what my form of writing was called. I was writing about transits, but I didn't even really fully realize that I was writing about transits. I just launched into it, right? And I also launched into mundane astrology. And I didn't know that was the name of it. I didn't know that was the name of what I was doing. But after I just did my 13-year anniversary of starting my website, and also just sort of starting my astrology business in general. And it's anyway, this article is an example of mundane astrology for anyone who is learning about astrology. This is one of the ways that you can use astrology to understand world events, to put world events into their context, to understand patterns that are going on, and for me, to understand the way that astrology may be being used to time certain events. Okay, so you be the judge. You can check it out. But anyway, I just wanted to mark this day, 10th anniversary of Fukushima, and to sort of give recognition to all the people who have worked on this issue over the years, and in particular the bloggers. I find because a lot of what I find is a lot of the articles get taken down, right? A lot of the mainstream media articles get taken down. A lot of the scientific papers and information gets taken down, but it's the bloggers, who are sort of not capturing that information, but they're bringing that information onto a new platform. And so blogging, it doesn't necessarily get a lot of respect as far in the world of writing in general, but I honestly give it mad respect, because I think it's really one of the most raw and real, and it can be one of the most honest forms of writing out there, right? Because there's no sort of official line that you have to align yourself with. You can just put it out there, right? So I just want to recognize that there are so many people who've been working on the issue as well as the ramifications of the Deepwater Horizon explosion as well. There have been so many people who have just sort of kept working on this issue. And, the reason that we're working on this issue is because we want the truth, and we want an actual solution to this, right? We don't want generation after generation carrying the burden of this through their own health and through their own well-being, right? And so that's some of what comes up with the sign of Pisces. Now, the sign of Pisces is going to be in the spotlight because Jupiter is going to be moving into Pisces. When exactly? I believe it's the spring of 2021. Yes, so May 13th, 2021. Jupiter will dip into Pisces for the first little stint in that sign, and Jupiter will, of course, be activating that Neptune Chiron conjunction in the disaster charts. So, and then following Jupiter in Pisces, of course, we will have Saturn in Pisces, and Saturn in Pisces is a little bit later on, but that is March 2023 to February 2026. So we're gonna get some Pisces lessons here, and this article is basically, giving people a heads up on that front. So anyway, I hope that it proves interesting to people, and thanks for listening.